My name is Dr. Carolyn Reed. I'm 38 years old, and 6 days ago, I woke up in a hospital bed to find my husband of 12 years standing over me with a syringe. He thought I was asleep. He thought the sedatives had done their job. But I saw everything, and what I discovered in that moment would lead me to uncover a conspiracy so twisted, so calculated, that it would destroy 3 lives and rebuild mine from the ashes. If you're watching this, you need to understand something about trust. We give it so freely to the people we love. We hand them the keys to our lives, our bodies, our futures, and we assume they'll protect us. But sometimes the person holding the keys is the one locking you in a cage, and sometimes that cage is a hospital bed. Before I continue, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love hearing from you. And if this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let me tell you exactly how I discovered that the man I trusted with my life was trying to take it from me. I need you to understand who I was before all of this happened. Before the hospital, before the revelation, before I became someone I didn't recognize in the mirror. I was a cardiologist. Ironic, isn't it? I spent my entire career fixing broken hearts, literally while mine was being systematically destroyed, and I didn't even know it. I graduated top of my class from Johns Hopkins, did my residency at Massachusetts General. By 35, I was the youngest attending physician in the cardiothoracic unit at Presbyterian Hospital in Manhattan. I met Daniel Reed at a medical conference in Chicago. He was a pharmaceutical sales representative for Meridian Biotech, one of the largest drug manufacturers in the country. Charming, handsome, well-educated. He knew just enough about medicine to hold intelligent conversations without pretending to be something he wasn't. He made me laugh. God, he made me laugh so much in those early days. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. A surprise dinner at Le Bernardin, my favorite restaurant. The ring was perfect, a simple platinum band with a 2-carat diamond. Nothing ostentatious. He knew I didn't like flashy displays of wealth, despite the fact that I made 3 times his salary. He said he loved that about me. My humility, my dedication to saving lives over making money. I should have seen it then. The first red flag, the way his smile tightened just slightly when I mentioned my salary during a conversation with friends. The way he'd make small jokes about being Mr. Dr. Reed, the trophy husband. I thought he was being self-deprecating, humble. I thought it was endearing. I was a fool. Our wedding was beautiful. Small ceremony in the Hamptons, just close family and friends. My parents were there, beaming with pride. My sister Vanessa stood as my maid of honor. Daniel's mother Patricia came from Connecticut, and his sister Lauren flew in from Los Angeles. Everyone said we were the perfect couple, the brilliant doctor and her charming husband, a modern love story. The first 5 years of marriage were good. I mean, I thought they were good. I was working 80-hour weeks at the hospital. Emergency surgeries, consultations, research papers. Daniel supported me. He'd have dinner waiting when I got home at midnight. He'd rub my feet while we watched mindless television. He never complained about my schedule, never made me feel guilty for prioritizing my career. Looking back now, I understand why. He was playing the long game, building trust, establishing himself as the devoted, supportive husband so that when the time came, no one would question his motives. No one would suspect what he was really doing. Things started changing around year 6, subtle shifts that I explained away because I was too exhausted to pay attention. Daniel started taking more interest in my work schedule. Not in a supportive way, but in a tracking way. He'd want to know exactly when I'd be home, which surgeries I had scheduled, which colleagues I'd be working with. He started commenting on my appearance, little digs disguised as concern. "You look tired, Caroline. Are you sleeping enough? You've lost weight? Are you eating properly? You seem distracted lately. Is everything okay at work?" I thought he was worried about me. I thought he cared. He was actually documenting, building a narrative, creating a paper trail of a wife who was overworked, exhausted, possibly mentally unstable, a wife who might make mistakes, a wife whose judgment couldn't be trusted. Then Patricia moved in. Daniel's mother. That's when everything accelerated. She showed up with 3 suitcases and a story about her apartment building being renovated. "Temporary," Daniel said, "just for a few months until she finds a new place. That was 2 years ago. She never left." Patricia Reed was a woman who believed that her son deserved better than me. She never said it directly, but it was in every look, every comment, every criticism. My cooking was too bland. My housekeeping wasn't thorough enough. I worked too much. I didn't pay enough attention to Daniel. I wasn't giving her grandchildren because I was too selfish and career-focused. I tried to be understanding. She was a widow. Her husband had died young, and she'd raised Daniel and Lauren alone. She was lonely. She wanted to be close to her son. I told myself I could handle having her in our space. What I didn't realize was that I wasn't dealing with just an overbearing mother-in-law. I was dealing with an accomplice. Patricia and Daniel would have long conversations in hushed tones. They'd stop talking when I entered rooms. She'd make comments about how Daniel deserved a wife who was present, who could take care of him properly. He'd defend me publicly, but I'd catch him nodding along when he thought I wasn't looking. And then there was Lorne, Daniel's sister. She'd gotten divorced and lost custody of her kids. She blamed it on her ex-husband's lawyers, but I'd seen the court documents she left lying around. There were allegations of neglect, drug use, unstable living conditions. She moved in with us 6 months after Patricia arrived. Another temporary situation that became permanent. 3 of them, Daniel, Patricia, Lauren, all living in my house, the house I'd bought with my salary before we got married. The house that was in my name alone because Daniel's credit wasn't good enough to qualify for the mortgage. They treated me like a guest in my own home. No, that's not accurate. They treated me like staff, like I existed to serve them, cook their meals, pay their bills, fund their lifestyles, and never ever complain about it. I was drowning, working 80 hours a week, coming home to a house full of people who resented me, sleeping maybe 4 hours a night. My health started declining. I developed migraines, heart palpitations, extreme fatigue. I'd fall asleep during meetings. I'd forget conversations. I'd lose track of time. Daniel suggested I see a doctor. His concern seemed so genuine. He'd hold my hand and tell me he was worried about me, that I was pushing myself too hard, that I needed to slow down before something serious happened. I went to my colleague, Dr. Stephen Martinez. He ran blood tests. Everything came back normal. He said it was stress, burnout. He recommended I take a leave of absence from the hospital. Rest, recover, focus on my health. I didn't want to. I loved my work. It was the only thing in my life that still made sense, but everyone was so concerned. Daniel, Patricia, even Lauren pretended to care. They said I needed to listen to the doctors, that I needed to put my health first. So I took a leave of absence, 6 months, paid medical leave from the hospital. I thought I'd spend the time resting, recovering, maybe traveling, getting back to myself. Instead, I got worse. The migraines intensified. The fatigue became debilitating. I'd sleep for 14 hours and wake up feeling like I'd been drugged. My memory deteriorated. I'd forget entire days. I'd have conversations with people and have no recollection of them later. Daniel was so attentive, so caring. He'd bring me tea every morning, special herbal blends his mother recommended. He'd make sure I took my vitamins. He'd sit with me for hours, just holding my hand, telling me everything would be okay. And then I started experiencing hallucinations, visual disturbances, paranoia. I'd see shadows moving in my peripheral vision. I'd think I heard voices. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, convinced someone was in the room with me. That's when Daniel suggested I needed more intensive care, that maybe I should be hospitalized. Just temporarily, he said. Just until the doctors could figure out what was wrong, until they could stabilize me. I was terrified. I was a doctor myself, and I couldn't figure out what was happening to my own body. I'd run every test, imaginable. Everything came back normal. But I felt like I was dying, like my body was shutting down piece by piece. So I agreed to be admitted to Presbyterian Hospital, my own hospital, the place where I'd worked for 10 years, the place where I was respected, admired, trusted. I checked in on a Tuesday morning. Daniel drove me. Patricia and Lauren came along, playing the role of concerned family members. The admitting nurse was someone I'd worked with for years. She looked at me with such pity, such concern. I wanted to tell her I was fine, that this was just a precaution, but I couldn't form the words. My brain felt like it was wrapped in cotton. They put me in a private room on the cardiology floor. My floor. I could see the nurses' station from my bed. I recognized everyone. They all knew me. They all looked at me with that same expression of sympathetic concern. Dr. Martinez took my case personally. He ordered a full workup, MRI, CT scan, complete metabolic panel, toxicology screen, everything. He told Daniel we'd get to the bottom of this, that we'd figure out what was causing these symptoms. The first night in the hospital, I felt strange relief. I was in a safe place. Medical professionals were monitoring me. Whatever was wrong would be identified and treated. I could finally stop feeling crazy. Daniel stayed with me that first night, sleeping in the chair next to my bed, being the devoted husband. The nurses kept commenting on how lucky I was to have such a caring partner, how most spouses would have gone home, but he refused to leave my side. I fell asleep around 10 p.m. The nurse had given me something to help me rest, a mild sedative, standard protocol for patients with anxiety and sleep disturbances. I woke up around 2 a.m., not fully awake. That strange half-conscious state where you're aware of your surroundings, but your body won't respond to your commands. Sleep paralysis, basically. That's when I saw him. Daniel was standing next to my IV pole. In his hand was a syringe. Small, maybe 3 milliliters. He was checking the IV line, tracing it from the bag down to where it connected to my arm. I tried to move, tried to speak. Nothing. My body was completely frozen, but my eyes were slightly open, just enough to see through my lashes. He looked at me, checking to make sure I was asleep. His face was completely emotionless, cold, like he was performing a routine task, like he was taking out the trash or washing dishes. Then he inserted the syringe into the IV port, the one closest to my arm, the one that would deliver whatever was in that syringe directly into my bloodstream within seconds. He pressed the plunger slowly, methodically. I watched the clear liquid disappear from the syringe and enter the IV line. Watched it travel down the tube toward my arm. And then I felt it, a wave of heat spreading through my veins, starting at my hand and moving up my arm, into my chest. My heart rate spiked. I could hear the monitor beeping faster. Could see Daniel's eyes flick to the screen, but he didn't panic, didn't call for help. Just calmly removed the syringe, tucked it into his pocket, and sat back down in his chair. The heat spread through my entire body. My vision blurred. My breathing became shallow, and the last thing I remember before losing consciousness completely was thinking, he just poisoned me. My husband just poisoned me. When I woke up the next morning, Daniel was gone. A nurse told me he'd left around 6 a.m. to go home and shower, but he'd be back soon. She said he'd barely left my side all night, that I was so lucky to have him. I didn't tell her what I'd seen. I couldn't, because a part of me wondered if it had been real, if I'd actually seen what I thought I'd seen, or if it was another hallucination, another symptom of whatever was wrong with me. But I knew. Deep in my gut, in that place where instinct lives, I knew. My husband was trying to kill me. The question was why, and the bigger question was how to prove it. I spent that entire day pretending to be asleep, pretending to be sicker than I was. The sedatives they'd given me the night before had worn off hours ago, but I kept my breathing slow and even, kept my eyes closed. Let the nurses do their checks without acknowledging them. I needed to observe, to gather information, to figure out what the hell was happening. Dr. Martinez came by around noon. I heard him talking to Daniel, who had returned with fresh clothes and coffee. They stood just outside my door, voices low but audible. All her tests are coming back normal, Daniel. There's no medical explanation for her symptoms. What does that mean? Daniel's voice was perfectly calibrated. Concerned husband, confused, desperate for answers. It means we need to consider other possibilities, psychological factors, stress-induced psychosomatic symptoms, depression, anxiety disorders. You think this is all in her head? I think Caroline has been under tremendous pressure for years. The human body can only take so much before it starts breaking down. Sometimes that breakdown manifests physically. I heard Daniel sigh. What do we do? I'd like to bring in a psychiatrist, Dr. Sarah Chen. She's excellent, specializes in high-functioning professionals dealing with burnout and mental health crises. Whatever you think is best. I just want my wife back. The lie was so smooth, so convincing. If I hadn't seen what I'd seen the night before, I would have believed him too. Dr. Chen came by that afternoon. She was in her 50s, kind eyes, gentle voice. She sat next to my bed and talked to me for over an hour, asked about my childhood, my career, my marriage, my stress levels, my sleep patterns, my relationships. I answered honestly. Too honestly. I told her about the pressure at work, about Patricia and Lauren living with us, about feeling overwhelmed and exhausted, about the migraines and the memory loss and the hallucinations. I watched her take notes. Watched her. Face remained carefully neutral, and I knew what diagnosis she was building toward. Mental breakdown, psychosis, depression, burnout. Everything Daniel needed to paint me as unreliable, unstable, incompetent. That night, I pretended to take the sleeping medication the nurse brought, held it under my tongue, waited for her to leave, then spit it into a tissue. I needed to be awake. I needed to be alert. Daniel arrived around 9 p.m. Patricia and Lauren came with him this time. They stood around my bed, like mourners at a funeral. How is she? Patricia asked the nurse. Resting comfortably. Dr. Chen has her on some new medications to help with the anxiety and sleep disturbances. Poor thing, Lauren said. She works herself to death, and this is what happens. I kept my breathing steady. Let them think I was unconscious. They stayed for an hour, talking about me like I wasn't there. Patricia mentioned that she'd spoken to the hospital administration, that there were concerns about whether I'd be able to return to work, that maybe it was time to consider disability retirement. Lauren talked about how the house was too big for me to manage anyway, that maybe it was time to sell it, that Daniel could use the money to start over somewhere smaller, more manageable. They were planning my future, my career, my assets, my life, and I was supposed to be too sick to notice. Around 11 p.m., the nurse came in to check my vitals. I heard Patricia tell her that they'd be leaving soon, but Daniel wanted to stay the night again. "Such a devoted husband," the nurse said. After everyone left, it was just me and Daniel. I listened to him settle into the chair, heard him scroll through his phone, heard him make a call. "It's working," he said quietly. "Martinez thinks it's all psychological. Chen is recommending psychiatric evaluation. Another week, maybe 2, and we'll have everything we need." Silence. Someone responding on the other end. "The house is already appraised. I've got a buyer lined up. Once she's declared incompetent, I can sell it as her legal guardian. Power of attorney is already in place." My blood ran cold. The money from the house, plus her retirement account, plus the life insurance. We're looking at close to $4 million. Split 3 ways like we agreed. 3 ways. Him, Patricia, and Lauren. "No, she won't remember. The doses are calibrated. Short-term memory loss is one of the side effects. By the time anyone figures out what happened, if they ever do, we'll be long gone." He ended the call, sat in silence for a while. Then I heard him stand up, heard his footsteps approach my bed. I kept my eyes closed, kept my breathing steady. I felt him check my IV line, felt him adjust something. Then I heard the familiar sound, the cap being removed from a syringe. This was it. This was my proof. But I needed more than just seeing it. I needed evidence, irrefutable evidence. I'd prepared for this. While everyone thought I was asleep earlier, I'd use my phone to text someone. Someone I trusted completely. Someone who would know exactly what to do. My sister Vanessa. Vanessa was a corporate attorney, sharp, strategic, ruthless when she needed to be. We'd always been close, but over the past 2 years, as my health declined and Patricia and Lauren moved in, we'd drifted apart. Daniel had been careful about that, suggesting I was too tired for visitors, that family stress would make my condition worse. But Vanessa was persistent. She'd kept calling, kept texting, kept showing up. And 3 days ago, before I was admitted to the hospital, she'd cornered me. "Caroline, something is wrong. You're not yourself. You need to tell me what's happening." I tried to brush her off, tried to say I was just tired, just stressed. But she wouldn't accept it. "I'm a lawyer, Caroline. I deal with liars every single day. And I'm telling you, Daniel is lying about something. I can feel it." At the time, I'd been defensive. Daniel was my husband. He loved me. He was taking care of me. But her words had planted a seed. A tiny seed of doubt that grew every time I woke up feeling worse instead of better. Every time I caught Daniel and Patricia whispering. Every time I felt like I was losing pieces of myself. So when I saw Daniel with that syringe the first night, the first person I thought to contact was Vanessa. I texted her from my hospital bed. "Something is wrong. Daniel is injecting something into my IV at night. I need help. Don't tell anyone. Come tomorrow night. Wait outside." She'd responded immediately. "On it. Don't let him know you're awake. I'm bringing help." Now, lying in that bed, watching my husband prepare to poison me again, I knew Vanessa was outside. I knew she'd brought whoever she needed to bring. I knew I just had to survive the next few minutes. Daniel inserted the syringe into the IV port. I felt the heat spread through my veins again, felt my heart rate spike, heard the monitor start beeping faster. And then I heard something else. The door opening. "Excuse me, Mr. Reed. I need to check Mrs. Reed's vitals." It was a nurse I didn't recognize. Young, confident voice. Daniel stepped back quickly. "Of course. Is everything okay?" Her heart rate just jumped. "Probably just a dream. It happens with the sedatives. I'll check her medications and make sure everything's calibrated correctly." I felt the nurse's hands on my arm, felt her adjust the IV line, and then I felt her palm press something into my hand. Small, rectangular, a phone. "You can wait outside if you'd like," the nurse said to Daniel. "This will just take a few minutes." "No, I'll stay." Hospital policy, family members need to step out during certain procedures. It'll just be a moment. I heard Daniel hesitate, then heard his footsteps leaving the room. The door closed. The nurse leaned close to my ear. "Dr. Reed, it's Detective Sarah Walsh. Your sister hired me. I'm with the Private Investigations Unit at Crenshaw Security. Keep your eyes closed and don't react. We've been recording everything for the past hour, audio and video. We have him on camera injecting something into your IV. We have the phone call. We have everything. I felt tears leak from my closed eyes. I'm going to disconnect your IV now, she continued. I'm going to make it look like a routine change, but really I'm preserving evidence. The syringe he used is in his pocket. We'll get that too. Your sister is outside with 2 uniformed officers. We're going to arrest him tonight. I wanted to open my eyes, wanted to thank her, wanted to scream and cry and rage at what had been done to me, but I stayed still, stayed quiet, let Detective Walsh do her job. She called Daniel back in after 5 minutes. Everything looks good. She's stable. Heart rate is back to normal. Daniel nodded, sat back down in his chair, acted like he hadn't just tried to kill his wife. I heard Detective Walsh leave, heard her footsteps fade down the hallway, and then I heard something else. Multiple footsteps, heavy, purposeful. The door opened again. Daniel Reed? A man's voice, deep, authoritative. Yes. I'm Detective Michael Torres, NYPD. I need you to step outside, please. What's this about? My wife is... Now, Mr. Reed. I heard Daniel stand, heard confusion in his voice. I don't understand what's happening. You're being detained for questioning in connection with attempted murder. The word hung in the air. Murder. What? No? No, you've made a mistake. I haven't... We have you on video injecting an unknown substance into your wife's IV. We have your phone call discussing fraud and exploitation of an incapacitated person. We have financial records showing you've been preparing to steal her assets. You have the right to remain silent. This is insane! Caroline, tell them this is a mistake. I opened my eyes. Daniel froze. His face went completely white. He'd thought I was unconscious. He'd thought I hadn't heard anything, hadn't seen anything. Hello, Daniel, I said. My voice was steady, cold. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? If this story is making your blood boil like mine was, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, the revenge gets so much better. Your support means everything to this channel. I watched Detective Torres put Daniel in handcuffs, watched him read my husband his rights while Daniel sputtered and protested and claimed this was all a misunderstanding. But his eyes kept darting back to me, looking for some sign that I would defend him, that I would tell the police they were wrong, that my devoted, caring husband would never hurt me. I gave him nothing, just stared at him with the same cold expression he'd worn while injecting poison into my veins. They took him out of the room. The last thing I heard was him shouting about his lawyer, about false accusations, about how I was mentally unstable and couldn't be trusted. The moment the door closed, Vanessa rushed in. She'd been waiting just outside. She wrapped her arms around me and I finally let myself cry, deep, wrenching sobs that shook my entire body. I've got you, she whispered. I've got you. You're safe now. But I wasn't safe. Not yet. Because Daniel wasn't the only one who needed to be stopped. Detective Walsh came back in, this time in regular clothes instead of scrubs. She'd been undercover as a nurse for the past 3 hours, brought in by Vanessa once I'd made contact. Dr. Reed, she said gently, I need to ask you some questions, and I need to run some tests. We need to know what he was giving you. Dr. Martinez appeared, looking shell-shocked. Caroline? God, I had no idea. If I'd known... You couldn't have known, I said. My voice sounded strange, hollow. He was careful, very careful. We need to draw blood immediately, Dr. Martinez said. Whatever he's been giving you, we need to identify it and start treatment. You could have serious organ damage. They drew 12 vials of blood, sent them to 3 different labs for analysis, put me on IV fluids to flush my system. Dr. Martinez wanted to run a complete cardiac workup, check my liver and kidney function, do another MRI to look for any neurological damage. I let them work, let them turn me into a test subject. Because every test, every result, every piece of evidence brought me closer to making sure Daniel would never hurt anyone again. The first results came back 3 hours later. Dr. Martinez came into my room, Vanessa by his side. His face was grim. Caroline, we found it. What he's been giving you. I sat up straighter. Tell me. Vecuronium bromide. It's a paralytic, used in surgery to temporarily paralyze patients during intubation. In small doses, it causes muscle weakness, fatigue, difficulty breathing. In larger doses, it causes complete paralysis. I felt sick. But I wasn't paralyzed. I could still move. He was giving you subtherapeutic doses, just enough to mimic neurological symptoms, just enough to make you appear sick without actually killing you. Yet? Dr. Martinez pulled up something on his tablet. We also found traces of lorazepam, diphenhydramine, and something else we're still identifying. He was giving you a cocktail of drugs designed to sedate you, cause memory loss, create cognitive impairment. He was essentially gaslighting you medically. Vanessa's hand tightened on mine. How long? Based on the levels in her system, I'd estimate 6 months, maybe longer. 6 months. Half a year of my husband slowly poisoning me, making me think I was losing my mind, making everyone around me think I was having a mental breakdown. The psychiatric evaluation, I said suddenly. Dr. Chen, was she? No, Dr. Martinez said quickly. Dr. Chen is completely above board. She was doing her job based on the symptoms you presented. Daniel manipulated her just like he manipulated everyone else. I thought about all those conversations with Dr. Chen, how I'd opened up about feeling overwhelmed, feeling like I was losing control, how she'd gently suggested that maybe I needed to step back from work, focus on my mental health. I'd been so honest with her, so vulnerable, and every word I'd said had been used against me. We need to search your house, Detective Walsh said. She'd been standing quietly in the corner taking notes. If he's been doing this for 6 months, there's got to be evidence. Empty vials, syringes, something. Patricia, I said. His mother and Lauren, his sister, they were in on it. I heard Daniel on the phone. He said they were splitting the money 3 ways. Detective Walsh nodded. We've got officers on the way to your residence now. Believe me, Dr. Reed, we're not just taking down Daniel. We're taking down everyone involved. The next few hours were a blur. Police searched my house. They found everything. A hidden cache of medications in Daniel's closet, syringes, vials, detailed notes about dosages and timing, financial documents showing exactly how they'd planned to liquidate my assets once I was declared incompetent. They found emails between Daniel and Patricia, between Daniel and Lauren, discussing the plan, arguing about money, about timelines, about what to do if I figured it out before they were ready. They arrested Patricia at the house. She tried to claim she didn't know what Daniel was doing, that she was just a concerned mother trying to help her son's sick wife. But the emails proved otherwise. She'd been the one to suggest using medications that would cause cognitive impairment. She'd researched symptoms of mental illness. She'd coached Daniel on how to document my deteriorating mental state to build a legal case for incompetency. Lauren was arrested at a bar in Manhattan. She'd been out celebrating, apparently. Had texted Daniel earlier that day. Almost there, few more weeks and we're millionaires. The text had been sent 2 hours before he was arrested. All 3 of them were charged with attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse — I wasn't elderly, but the vulnerability statute applied — and about a dozen other crimes. The bail hearing was 3 days later. I was still in the hospital, recovering. The drugs were slowly leaving my system, but I was weak. My body had been fighting poison for months. It would take time to heal. Vanessa went to the hearing on my behalf. She called me right after. Bail denied for all 3, she said. Her voice was triumphant. The judge said they posed a clear threat to you and a flight risk. They're staying locked up until trial. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt safe. Instead, I felt empty. My husband had tried to kill me. His mother and sister had helped him. They'd spent months planning my destruction, all for money, all for a house and some retirement accounts and a life insurance policy. I was worth more dead than alive to them. That realization sat in my chest like a stone, heavy, suffocating. But underneath the emptiness, something else was growing. Something colder, harder. Rage. I'd spent my entire career saving lives. I'd worked myself to exhaustion trying to help people. I'd let Daniel and his family into my home, into my life. I'd supported them financially and emotionally. And they'd tried to murder me for it. No, that wasn't going to stand. They wanted to destroy me? Fine, I'd destroy them first. I called Vanessa back. I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to file a civil lawsuit against all 3 of them. I want every asset they have, every penny, every possession. I want to take everything from them the way they tried to take everything from me. Vanessa was quiet for a moment. Caroline, the criminal case will put them in prison. That's not enough. I want them financially ruined. I want them to understand exactly what they tried to do to me. I want them to lose everything. Another pause. Then, okay, I'll draft the papers tonight. And Vanessa, I want you to dig. Find out if they've done this before. Daniel's worked for pharmaceutical companies for 15 years. This plan was too sophisticated, too calculated. He's done this before. You think there are other victims? I know there are. And I was right. Vanessa hired a team of private investigators. They went through Daniel's entire history, every job, every relationship, every city he'd lived in. They found 3 other women. The first was Melissa Chen. She'd been married to Daniel for 4 years before their divorce. She'd been a successful real estate developer, made millions. During their marriage, she'd started experiencing strange health problems, memory loss, cognitive impairment. Her doctors thought it was early onset dementia. She'd been forced to step down from her company. Daniel had been granted power of attorney. He'd liquidated her assets, taken everything, and then divorced her. She'd tried to fight it, tried to sue him for fraud, but without proof, without evidence. The court sided with him. She lost everything. Last anyone knew, she was living in a facility for people with cognitive disorders. The second was Jennifer Lawson. She'd been Daniel's girlfriend in his 20s, wealthy family, trust fund. They'd dated for 2 years. Then she died. Sudden cardiac arrest. She was 28 years old, perfectly healthy. The autopsy found high levels of potassium in her system. The medical examiner ruled it death by natural causes, but noted it was unusual for someone so young. Daniel had been the beneficiary of her life insurance policy, $500,000. The third was Rebecca Morse. She'd been engaged to Daniel, wealthy widow. Her husband had left her a fortune. She'd started experiencing health problems 6 months after they got engaged. Weakness, fatigue, confusion. Her children had been suspicious. They'd hired a private investigator. The investigator had found evidence that Daniel was slowly poisoning her. But before they could act, before they could go to the police, Rebecca died. Heart attack. She was 52. Daniel had already been named in her will. He'd gotten $2 million. The private investigator had gone to the police, but without hard evidence, without proof, they couldn't make a case. Daniel walked away, clean. 3 women. 3 destroyed lives. Millions of dollars stolen. And I was supposed to be number 4. I sat in my hospital bed, reading through the reports Vanessa had compiled, looking at pictures of these women. Melissa, who looked so much like me, professional, successful, trusting. Jennifer, young and in love. Rebecca, who just wanted companionship in her later years. All of them destroyed by the man I'd married. I made a decision right there. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about justice for all of them. This was about making sure Daniel Reed never hurt another woman again. I called Detective Walsh. I want to testify at the trial. I want to tell everyone what he did. Dr. Reed, you don't have to. The evidence is overwhelming. We have him on video. We have the drugs. We have the financial records. He's going to prison whether you testify or not. I know, but I need to do this. Those other women, they never got justice. Melissa, Jennifer, Rebecca, they never got to face him. I can do it for them. Detective Walsh was quiet. Then, okay, I'll arrange it. The trial was set for 6 months later. 6 months to prepare, 6 months to recover, 6 months to gather every piece of evidence that would bury Daniel Reed. I was released from the hospital after 2 weeks. The drugs were out of my system. My cognitive function was returning. The migraines were gone. I was weak, underweight, but alive. I moved in with Vanessa. I couldn't go back to that house. Not yet. Not with all those memories, all those lies. Vanessa had my stuff moved out, everything I needed, clothes, documents, personal items. She had the locks changed, filed restraining orders against all 3 of them. The house was mine, legally, financially, morally, but I couldn't live there. Not yet. Instead, I focused on preparing for trial, going through evidence with prosecutors, meeting with other victims' families, building the strongest possible case, and I went back to work. Dr. Martinez had been horrified by what happened. The entire hospital was. They offered me extended medical leave, full pay, no questions asked. But I didn't want leave. I wanted to work. I wanted to save lives. I wanted to remember who I was before Daniel tried to take that away from me. So I went back to the cardiology unit, back to my patients, back to performing surgeries and saving hearts. My colleagues treated me differently at first, with kid gloves, like I might break at any moment. But I didn't break. I was stronger than I'd ever been. The trial began on a cold Monday in November. The courtroom was packed. Media everywhere. This case had become huge. A successful doctor poisoned by her husband. A pharmaceutical sales rep using his industry knowledge to commit murder. A conspiracy involving his entire family. It was the kind of story that made headlines. I sat in the front row with Vanessa, watching Daniel be let in, wearing prison orange. Watching Patricia and Lauren, who were being tried separately but simultaneously. All 3 of them looked diminished somehow. Smaller. Patricia had aged 10 years. Lauren looked strung out, desperate, and Daniel looked defeated. Good. The prosecution laid out their case. Video evidence of Daniel injecting substances into my IV, audio recordings of his phone calls, financial documents showing the conspiracy to steal my assets, expert testimony from Dr. Martinez about the drugs found in my system. And then there were the other cases. Melissa, who'd been found incompetent and institutionalized, Jennifer, who died mysteriously, Rebecca, who'd been poisoned but died before anyone could prove it. The prosecution argued that this was Daniel's pattern: find successful, wealthy women, charm them, marry them or get close to them, then slowly poison them while stealing everything they had. A professional predator. The defense tried to argue that I was mentally unstable, that my claims were delusions, that Daniel was a devoted husband who'd only been trying to help me. But the video evidence was irrefutable. You could see him clearly, inserting the syringe, injecting the substance, walking away like he'd done nothing wrong. On day 3 of the trial, I took the stand. The prosecutor, a woman named Rachel Kim, approached me gently. "Dr. Reed, can you tell the court about your relationship with Daniel Reed?" I looked at Daniel. He was staring at me with those same eyes that had once told me he loved me, that had convinced me he was devoted, that had lied to me for 12 years. "I trusted him," I said. My voice was steady, strong. "I loved him. I believed he loved me. I gave him everything, my home, my money, my time, my trust, and he used all of it to try to kill me." I told them everything, every detail, every symptom, every moment of confusion and fear, the migraines, the memory loss, the hallucinations, the feeling of losing myself piece by piece. And then I told them about the night I saw him, the syringe, the cold, emotionless look on his face as he poisoned me. When I woke up the next morning, I said, I wondered if it had been real, if I'd imagined it. Because the man I married couldn't possibly do something like that. The man I married loved me. I paused, looked directly at Daniel, but I didn't imagine it. And the man I married never loved me. He loved what I could give him, and when he'd taken everything he could take, he decided to finish the job. The courtroom was silent. "I'm a doctor," I continued. "I save lives for a living, and my husband tried to take mine. Not quickly, not mercifully. He did it slowly, deliberately, making me think I was losing my mind, making everyone else think I was mentally ill, all so he could steal my money and no one would question it." Rachel Kim nodded. "How does that make you feel, Dr. Reed?" "Angry," I said simply. "Betrayed, devastated. But mostly I feel determined. Determined that he never does this to anyone else. Determined that he pays for what he did to me and to the other women he's hurt." The defense attorney cross-examined me, tried to poke holes in my story, tried to suggest I'd been paranoid, that I'd imagined things, that the stress of my job had made me unstable. I answered every question calmly, cited evidence, referenced medical records, explained exactly how the drugs he'd given me had affected my body and mind. I was a doctor testifying in her own case. I knew the medicine, I knew the science, and I wasn't going to let them twist the truth. After 2 hours on the stand, I was dismissed. I walked back to my seat and Vanessa squeezed my hand. "You did perfect," she whispered. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Daniel Reed was convicted of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and 6 other felonies. Patricia and Lauren were convicted as accomplices. Sentencing was 2 weeks later. Daniel got 30 years, no possibility of parole for 20. Patricia got 15 years. Lauren got 12 years. I sat in that courtroom and watched the judge read the sentences, watched Daniel's face crumble, watched Patricia sob, watched Lauren scream that it wasn't fair, that they'd only been trying to help. And I felt nothing, no triumph, no satisfaction, no joy, just cold, hard certainty that justice had been served. But I wasn't done. The civil lawsuit was still pending. Vanessa had filed for damages in excess of $20 million. Every penny they had or would ever have. The case went to trial 3 months later. This time, it wasn't about criminal guilt. It was about restitution, about making them pay, literally, for what they'd done. The jury awarded me $23 million. Daniel's assets, Patricia's assets, Lauren's assets, future earnings, everything. They'd never see a penny of freedom money. If they ever got out of prison, every cent they earned would go to me until the debt was paid, which meant, effectively, they'd be paying me for the rest of their lives. I also sued Daniel's employer, Meridian Biotech. for negligent hiring, for failing to do proper background checks, for giving a man with a pattern of predatory behavior access to medications he used to poison people. We settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. Let's just say it was substantial. And then I did something else. I used the settlement money to set up a foundation, the Reed Foundation for Domestic Violence Prevention, specifically targeting women who are being medically abused or poisoned by intimate partners. We fund research. We train doctors to recognize the signs. We provide resources for victims. We pay for private investigators when someone suspects they're being poisoned but can't prove it. We've already helped 17 women escape situations similar to mine. 17 women who are alive today because someone believed them, because someone investigated, because someone fought for them. One of them was Melissa Chen, the first woman Daniel destroyed. The foundation paid for new testing, advanced neurological scans. We proved that her dementia had been drug-induced, that she'd been poisoned just like I had, that she wasn't mentally incompetent. She's suing Daniel now. She'll probably win. She'll probably get millions. But more importantly, she got her life back. She's running her real estate company again. She's reconnected with her family. She's thriving. That's what I wanted. Not just my own justice, but justice for everyone he hurt. A year after the trial, I sold the house. I couldn't keep it. Too many bad memories, too much pain embedded in those walls. I bought a new place, a penthouse in Manhattan with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the entire city. It's mine, only mine. No one else lives here. No one else has keys. It's my sanctuary. I still work at the hospital, still save lives, still do what I love, but I'm different now, harder, less trusting. I see the world differently. I see the danger and kindness, the risk and vulnerability, the price of trusting the wrong person. Some people might think that's sad, that Daniel broke something in me that can't be fixed. But I don't see it that way. He didn't break me, he tried to, and he failed. Instead, he transformed me into someone who won't be a victim, into someone who fights back, into someone who protects others from predators like him. And you know what? I sleep better now than I have in years, because I know that Daniel Reed is in a cell, that Patricia and Lauren are too, that they're eating prison food and sleeping on prison cots and living with the consequences of their choices. While I'm here, free, successful, alive. That's the real victory. Not the money, not the court victories, not even the foundation, though that matters. The real victory is that I survived, that I fought back, that I won. And to anyone watching this who's in a situation like mine, who feels like they're losing their mind, who suspects that someone close to them is hurting them but can't prove it, listen to me. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Find someone you trust and tell them what's happening. Don't wait. Don't hope it'll get better. Don't make excuses, because people like Daniel Reed don't stop. They don't change. They don't suddenly develop a conscience. They escalate. And if you don't fight back, you'll lose everything. But if you do fight back, if you gather evidence, if you get help, if you refuse to be a victim, you can win. I did. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story gave you the justice you needed to see, check out the other videos on screen. They're just as satisfying. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? See you in the next story. My name is Dr. Carolyn Reed. I'm 38 years old, and I'm the woman who sent her husband to prison for trying to murder her. And I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat. But there's more to this story. Something I haven't told you yet. Something that happened 6 months after the sentencing that changed everything one final time. Because Daniel wasn't done trying to destroy me. Even from prison, he had one last card to play. And when I found out what it was, I realized that the battle I thought was over had only been the opening act. Let me tell you about the final confrontation, the one that truly ended this nightmare once and for all. It started with a letter, hand-delivered to my office by a courier, plain manila envelope, no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper with 3 words typed in the center. Check your mother. My blood ran cold. My mother, Elizabeth Reed, she'd kept Daniel's last name after my father died, said it was too much hassle to change it back, was living in an assisted living facility in Connecticut. She was 68, diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's 3 years ago. I visited her twice a month. She had good days and bad days. On good days, she recognized me. On bad days, I was a stranger. I'd always attributed her decline to the disease, to age, to genetics. But now, holding that cryptic message, a horrifying possibility bloomed in my mind. I called the facility immediately. asked to speak to the director. Her name was Margaret Sutton, a kind woman in her 50s who'd always been attentive to my mother's care. Dr. Reed, is everything all right? I need you to check something for me. My mother's medications, who prescribes them, who administers them, and I need a complete list of everyone who's visited her in the past 3 years. There was a pause. That's an unusual request. Is there a problem? Just please, check the records. I'll be there in 2 hours. I drove to Connecticut with my heart pounding. Vanessa insisted on coming with me. We barely spoke during the drive. Both of us were thinking the same thing. If Daniel had done this to my mother, if he'd been poisoning her the same way he'd poisoned me, if her Alzheimer's diagnosis had been manufactured, the implications were too monstrous to contemplate. We arrived at Meadowbrook Assisted Living just before noon. Margaret met us in her office, a thick file folder on her desk. Dr. Reed, I pulled everything you asked for. Your mother's medication records, visitor logs, staff schedules for the past 3 years. I opened the file with trembling hands, started reading. My mother's Alzheimer's diagnosis had come 3 years ago, right around the time Patricia moved in with us. The symptoms had started slowly: forgetfulness, confusion, mood swings. Her doctor had run tests, done brain scans, and concluded it was early-onset Alzheimer's. But I'd been too consumed with my own health problems to question it, too exhausted from work and managing Daniel's family to dive deep into my mother's medical records. And Daniel had been so supportive. He'd helped me find this facility. He'd recommended the doctor who diagnosed her. He'd even volunteered to handle her medication management since he worked in pharmaceuticals and understood these things. Oh, God. I flipped to the visitor logs. Daniel had visited my mother once a week for 3 years. Every Tuesday afternoon, he'd told me he was going to check on her because I was too busy at work, that he was being a good son-in-law. I'd been grateful. I'd been so fucking grateful that he cared about my mother. Margaret, I said, my voice shaking. The medications my mother is on. Who prescribed them? She checked her records. Dr. Richard Kellerman, he's a neurologist, specializes in degenerative cognitive disorders. And where did Daniel recommend I take her when she first started showing symptoms? Margaret's face went pale. Dr. Kellerman's office. I remember because Daniel said he knew him through his pharmaceutical work, that Dr. Kellerman was the best in the field. Vanessa grabbed my hand. Caroline. I was already pulling out my phone. Calling Detective Walsh. She answered on the second ring. Dr. Reed, I need you to investigate someone. Dr. Richard Kellerman, neurologist. I think he's connected to Daniel. I think they've been poisoning my mother, faking her Alzheimer's diagnosis. Silence on the other end. Then, I'll make some calls. Where are you? Meadowbrook Assisted Living in Connecticut. I'm with my mother now. Don't let anyone give her any medications. Don't let anyone touch her. I'll have officers there in 20 minutes. I hung up, looked at Margaret. I need to see my mother, right now, and I need her medical records, all of them, and I need you to isolate her medications. Don't dispose of them. Don't let anyone touch them. They're evidence. Margaret nodded, her face ashen. Room 237. I'll call the nurse and tell her not to administer anything. We rushed to my mother's room. She was sitting in a chair by the window, staring out at the garden. She looked so small, so fragile, so much older than 68. Mom? I knelt beside her chair. Mom, it's Caroline. Can you hear me? She turned slowly. Her eyes were cloudy, unfocused. Caroline, is it Tuesday? You usually come on Saturdays. I know, Mom. I came early. I need to ask you something. Has Daniel been visiting you? Her face brightened slightly. Daniel? Yes. Such a nice boy. Always brings me tea, special tea. Says it helps with my memory. My stomach dropped. What kind of tea, Mom? I don't know. He makes it himself. Brings it in a thermos. Says the facility tea isn't good enough for me. She smiled, that vague, distant smile I'd come to associate with her bad days. He's such a good son. Vanessa made a strangled sound beside me. Mom, when was the last time Daniel brought you tea? Tuesday. He comes every Tuesday. She blinked, confusion crossing her face. Wait, is today Tuesday? I can't remember. It's Thursday, Mom. Daniel can't visit you anymore. He's away. Away? She looked distressed. But who will bring my tea? The nurses will take care of you, Mom. You don't need Daniel's tea anymore. Detective Walsh arrived with 2 officers and a medical team. They drew blood from my mother, collected her medications, took samples of everything in her room, and then we waited. The results came back 3 days later. I was in Detective Walsh's office with Vanessa when she gave us the news. "Your mother doesn't have Alzheimer's, Dr. Reed." I closed my eyes, felt tears stream down my face. "She has high levels of scopolamine in her system. It's a drug that causes memory loss, confusion, and cognitive impairment. In high doses, it mimics dementia almost perfectly. Combined with benzodiazepines and antihistamines, which we also found in her system, it creates the exact symptom profile of Alzheimer's disease." "How long?" I asked. "How long has he been doing this to her?" "Based on the levels in her tissue samples and hair analysis, at least 3 years, possibly longer." 3 years. My mother had been in that facility for 3 years, being systematically poisoned, while I visited twice a month and watched her deteriorate and thought it was just the disease progressing. "Dr. Kellerman?" Vanessa asked. "We brought him in for questioning this morning. He broke within an hour. Daniel paid him $50,000 to provide the false diagnosis, to prescribe medications that would make your mother appear to have Alzheimer's, to document her decline in medical records." "Why?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Your mother's estate. She has a will. Everything goes to you when she dies. But Daniel convinced her to add him as the executor 3 years ago. Said it would be easier since you were so busy with work. If your mother died while you were incapacitated or dead, Daniel would have controlled everything. Her estate is worth about $2.5 million. Another $2.5 million on top of my $4 million, plus life insurance, $6.5 million total, split 3 ways between Daniel, Patricia, and Lauren. I thought I'd discovered the full extent of their conspiracy, but I'd only scratched the surface." "He's charged with additional counts now," Detective Walsh said. "Attempted murder of your mother, conspiracy with Dr. Kellerman, elder abuse, medical fraud. This adds at least another 20 years to his sentence." "And my mother? Will she recover?" Detective Walsh's expression softened. "The neurologist we consulted says yes. With proper treatment and time, the drugs will clear her system. Her memory should return. The cognitive impairment should reverse. She'll need therapy, rehabilitation, but she should make a full recovery." I couldn't speak, could only sit there crying while Vanessa held me. My mother didn't have Alzheimer's. She'd been poisoned, deliberately, methodically poisoned for 3 years, and I hadn't seen it. The trial for the additional charges was swift. Dr. Kellerman testified against Daniel in exchange for a reduced sentence. He detailed everything: the payments, the false diagnosis, the fake medical records, the medications designed to destroy my mother's mind. Daniel sat in that courtroom and showed no remorse. When the prosecutor asked him why he did it, why he poisoned 2 women who'd never done anything but love and support him, he said, "They had money I needed. It was just business." Just business. My life, my mother's life, Melissa's life, Jennifer's and Rebecca's lives. Just business. The judge added 30 more years to his sentence. Consecutive, not concurrent. 60 years total. Daniel Reed would die in prison. Patricia and Lauren got additional time too, for conspiracy, for knowing about the plot against my mother and doing nothing to stop it. They'd all spend the rest of their lives behind bars. 6 months after that final trial, I went back to Meadowbrook. But this time, I wasn't visiting a patient. I was picking up my mother to take her home. She stood in the lobby with her suitcase, looking nervous and excited, and more like herself than I'd seen her in years. The cloudiness in her eyes was gone. The confusion had lifted. She was sharp, clear, present. "Caroline!" She rushed over and hugged me, a real hug, strong and tight and full of recognition. "I can't believe I'm finally leaving this place." "You look amazing, Mom." "I feel amazing. It's like waking up from a nightmare." She paused, her face growing serious. "I remember everything now. What Daniel did. What I said to you. How I trusted him. How I let him." "Mom, stop. You couldn't have known. None of us could have known." "But I should have protected you. I'm your mother. And instead, I needed you to protect me." "We protect each other," I said firmly. "That's what family does." We drove back to Manhattan together. Mom was moving into my penthouse. She'd sold her house in Connecticut. Too many bad memories. We were starting over together. On the drive, she told me about her recovery, how the memories had come back slowly at first, then in a flood. How she'd remembered Daniel's visits, the tea he'd bring, the way he'd watch her drink it with that cold, calculating look. "I remember thinking something was wrong," she said, "thinking the tea tasted bitter, but he'd say it was herbal, good for my brain, and I trusted him. God help me, I trusted him." "We all did, Mom." "How did you figure it out? About me?" I told her about the anonymous letter, the 3 words, Check your mother." "Who sent it?" she asked. "I don't know. The courier company said it was paid for in cash. No name, no return address. But I have a theory." "What theory?" "Angela, Daniel's sister, the one who turned against them. I think she knew about your poisoning too. I think that was her way of making sure we found out, of making sure the whole truth came out." Mom was quiet for a moment. "I hope you're right. I hope someone in that family had a conscience." We settled into a routine over the next few months. Mom started physical therapy, occupational therapy, cognitive therapy. The doctors were amazed by her recovery. Within 6 months, she was completely back to normal. Better than normal, actually. Sharper than she'd been in years. She started volunteering with the Reed Foundation, using her experience to help other victims. She became one of our most powerful advocates, would speak at events, tell her story, encourage others to trust their instincts. "If your gut tells you something is wrong," she'd say, "listen to it. Your instincts are trying to save your life." I threw myself into my work. At the hospital, saving lives. At the foundation, saving futures. I performed surgeries. I gave lectures. I trained other doctors to recognize the signs of medical abuse. And slowly, painfully, I started to heal. Not just physically, emotionally, psychologically. The betrayal had cut deep, had made me question everything I thought I knew about trust, love, relationships. But I wasn't going to let Daniel's evil destroy my capacity for human connection. 2 years after the final trial, I met someone. His name was Marcus Chen. He was a trauma surgeon at a different hospital. We met at a medical conference, started talking about a complex cardiac case. The conversation lasted 3 hours. He asked me to dinner. I said no. Too soon. Too complicated. Too scary. He respected that, didn't push, just said, "When you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'd love to take you to dinner." 6 months later, I was ready. We took it slow, very slow. I was upfront about everything from the beginning, about Daniel, about the poisoning, about the trial, about my trust issues, and my fear of being vulnerable again. Marcus listened to all of it, never judged, never tried to minimize what I'd been through. "I can't imagine what that was like," he said. "But I can promise you this, I will never lie to you. I will never manipulate you. And if you ever feel unsafe, even for a second, you can walk away. No questions, no guilt." We dated for a year before I let him meet my mother, another 6 months before I gave him a key to my apartment. And when he proposed, 3 years after we met, I said yes. Not because I needed him, not because I was afraid of being alone, but because I genuinely loved him, because he'd proven himself, because I'd learned the difference between the performance of devotion and the reality of it. We got married in a small ceremony, just family and close friends. Vanessa was my maid of honor. Mom cried happy tears. My colleagues from the hospital came. Melissa Chen came, fully recovered now and running her real estate empire again. Daniel sent a letter from prison, congratulating me, saying he was happy I'd found love again, that he'd always wanted me to be happy. I burned it without reading past the first line. Some people don't deserve your attention. Some people don't deserve your forgiveness. Some people deserve to be forgotten. Daniel Reed was one of them. 5 years after the final trial, I was invited to speak at a medical conference about poisoning cases and how to identify them. The auditorium was packed, hundreds of doctors, nurses, medical students. I stood at that podium and told my story. All of it. The poisoning, the discovery, the trial, the aftermath. And I ended with this. I'm standing here today because I trusted my instincts, because my sister refused to look away, because investigators believed me, because the justice system, for once, worked the way it's supposed to. But not everyone is that lucky. There are women right now being poisoned by people they love, being medically abused, being gaslit into thinking they're crazy when they're actually being systematically destroyed. As medical professionals, we have a responsibility to see them, to believe them, to investigate when something doesn't add up. Because if I'd gone to a doctor who dismissed my concerns, who accepted Daniel's narrative that I was mentally unstable, I wouldn't be here today. I'd be dead, or institutionalized, or so damaged that recovery would be impossible. Your belief matters. Your willingness to investigate matters. Your refusal to accept easy explanations matters. You might save someone's life just by listening, just by believing, just by asking one more question. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, dozens of people came up to me, shared their own stories, asked how to help patients they suspected were being abused, asked how to recognize the signs. I gave them resources, directed them to the foundation, connected them with experts, and I realized something profound. Daniel hadn't destroyed me. He'd transformed me into someone who could help others, who could use my experience to prevent other women from suffering the same fate. That wasn't the outcome he wanted, but it was the outcome he got. Today, I'm 43 years old. I've been married to Marcus for 3 years. My mother lives 2 floors below us in the same building, healthy and thriving. Vanessa is still my best friend, my fiercest advocate, my sister in every way that matters. The Reed Foundation has helped over 200 women escape medical abuse situations. We've trained thousands of healthcare providers. We've changed hospital protocols. We've saved lives. Daniel is still in prison. He'll be there for another 55 years. Patricia died last year. Heart attack. Lauren is still serving her sentence. I don't think about them often. They don't deserve space in my mind. Instead, I think about the women we've helped, the lives we've saved, the futures we've protected. I think about my mother, vibrant and healthy at 73, volunteering at the foundation and living the life Daniel tried to steal from her. I think about Melissa, who rebuilt her entire company and is now a major donor to the foundation. I think about my patients whose hearts I repair, whose lives I extend. And I think about Marcus, who shows me every day what real love looks like, what real partnership means, what genuine devotion actually is. That's my victory, not the court cases, not the money, not even the justice, though that mattered. My victory is that I'm still here, still fighting, still saving lives, still refusing to let what happened to me define who I am. Daniel Reed tried to erase me. Instead, he made me unforgettable. And that's the real revenge. Living well, living loudly, living visibly, showing every woman who's been hurt that survival is possible, that recovery is possible, that justice is possible, that you can look your abuser in the eye and say, "You tried to destroy me, you failed, and now I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you fail to destroy anyone else." That's my story, that's my truth, that's my victory. And if you're watching this and you're scared, if you're confused, if you suspect something is wrong but you can't prove it, trust yourself, document everything, tell someone you trust. Don't wait for it to get better, because it won't get better. Abusers don't change, poisoners don't stop. But you can survive, you can fight back, you can win. I did, and you can too. My name is Dr. Carolyn Reed. I'm 43 years old. I'm a cardiologist, a wife, a daughter, a sister, and the founder of an organization that has saved hundreds of lives. And I'm the woman who sent her husband to prison for trying to murder her and her mother. Every single day, I wake up grateful that I'm still here to tell this story. Every single day, I use my voice to help someone else escape their nightmare. Every single day, I choose life over the death Daniel planned for me. That's not just survival, that's triumph. And it's the ending he never saw coming.